The Velcari were spoken of with reverence across 17 star systems. Every culture that knew of them described them with the same words: delicate, radiant, ethereal. Their wings were their signature gift. They weren't feathery or insect-like, but crystalline, translucent sheets that glimmered like glass dipped in starlight. Sprouting from their shoulders, these fragile membranes were considered sacred on their home world. Children were taught to move around Velcari with gentle respect, the same way one might handle ancient artwork or rare flowers. But beyond their home planet, not everyone saw delicacy as something to honor. In the rougher corners of the galaxy, delicacy was often treated as an invitation to cruelty. Nowhere was this more true than on Station Kepler-442. It was a massive hub floating between trade routes, home to dozens of alien species and hundreds of cultural tensions. The prestigious Interspecies Academy was located there, promising a bright future to students from across the galaxy. But prestige didn't erase prejudice, and its halls were filled with quiet conflicts. Some were verbal, some were political, and some were physical. For Zer F, a young Velcari girl, every morning had become a ritual of fear. For 3 long standard months, she walked through the Academy's education wing with her wings folded tight against her back, hugging the wall like prey trying to slip past predators unnoticed. She had learned that if she made herself small, she might avoid the hands that sought to harm her. The corridor usually buzzed at this time of day. Kryn children clicked around in their armored exoskeletons. Thoraxians scuttled on multiple limbs, chatting loudly. And, of course, there were the drooler species covered in thick hides with powerful arms and an unfortunate reputation for aggression. Their mere presence dominated the space. And at the center of all Zereth's dread was Gra, a drool youth whose size and confidence made him the king of the hallway. "There she is," his deep voice rumbled one morning, just as it had during countless others. His heavy footsteps echoed as he approached, flanked by 2 other drool students. They fanned out to block Zer's path. Morning, little moth, ready to fly. Zer's antenna drooped close to her cheeks. She knew how this would go. She had known for months. Gra reached out with one massive hand and seized the edge of her left wing. The moment his claws touched the delicate membrane, pain shot through her entire body. Velcari wings were laced directly into their nervous systems. Even a slight bend felt like being struck by lightning. Gra twisted just a little, just enough. A web of fractures spread across the surface of her wing like cracks in a frozen lake. Zer gasped and collapsed to her knees. Tears spilled from her eyes. The pain was sharp enough to steal her breath, but the humiliation, as always, cut deeper. The students passing by pretended not to see. Some genuinely didn't want to get involved with drool. Others simply didn't care. No one ever helped her. "Leave some for tomorrow," one of Gra's friends joked as they lumbered away, laughing. Zer slid down the wall, clutching her wing. It would regenerate by evening. Velcari biology was miraculous like that. But her spirit felt more damaged with each passing day. She had begun to wonder if the Academy was truly worth this torment. The future she had dreamed of felt small compared to the pain she lived through daily. Then a new voice cut through her despair. "Hey!" Zer blinked through her tears and looked up. Standing over her was a human girl. Humans were still new to the galactic community, and most species didn't know what to make of them yet. They didn't have exoskeletons. They didn't have venom or claws or psychic abilities. They were soft-skinned and fragile-looking, but they carried themselves in a way that suggested something old and dangerous lived in their bones. This human had dark hair tied back in a tight ponytail, and her eyes forward-facing, intense. Unmistakably predator eyes were fixed on Zer with surprising concern. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. I'll heal," Zer whispered, wiping her face. "That's not what I asked." The human crouched so she could look Zer directly in the eyes. "I'm Andrea. I just transferred here last week. I've been watching what they do to you." Zer flinched. "Then you know you should stay away from me. I'm not worth the trouble." Andrea's expression hardened. "Who decides that? Those oversized lizards? On my world, we have a saying, all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing." Zer swallowed. "Your world sounds violent." "Oh, it is," Andrea said with a tired smile. "We spent thousands of years perfecting the art of breaking things, including each other." She stood and offered Zer her hand. "Come on, let's get you to class." Zer took it, and for the first time in 3 months, she didn't walk alone. The next morning, Zer entered the corridor with her usual dread. Her wing had healed completely overnight, but the memory of the pain lingered like a phantom sensation. She saw Gra waiting for her in the same place as always. Her heart stuttered, but this time there was something different. Andrea stood nearby with her arms crossed, leaning casually against the wall. When Zer approached, Andrea tilted her head in a small but reassuring nod. "There's the little moth," Gra said as he stepped forward, reaching for Zer's wing. His hand never touched her. Andrea moved faster than Zer could follow. 1 second she was leaning against the wall, and the next she had Gra's arm in her grip, twisting it with practiced, effortless precision. Using his momentum, she slammed him face first into the wall. The entire corridor went silent except for the loud crack of Drool's skull meeting metal. "Sorry," Andrea said in a cheerful voice that contrasted sharply with the force she'd used. "Humans have really fast reflexes. Predator species thing. Did you know we evolved as pursuit hunters? We chased things across plains until they literally fell over." Gra groaned on the floor. His friends stepped forward, ready to retaliate. Before they could reach Andrea, another human appeared. A boy named Jeremy, broad-shouldered with a calm posture, pushed off from the wall and stood beside her. "I don't think you want to do this," he warned. "Humans might not have claws or armor, but we've been fighting things bigger than us since we lived in caves. We're pretty good at it." One of the drool lunged anyway. Andrea sidestepped and struck him in the torso with a sharp elbow. He collapsed instantly. Jeremy caught the next attacker and flipped him over his hip in a smooth, controlled throw. The drool hit the floor hard. In less than 15 seconds, it was over. Gra stood shakily, blood running from his nose. His eyes darted between Andrea and Jeremy with a fear Zer had never seen in him before. "This is how things work now," Andrea said, stepping in front of Zer. "You don't touch her. You don't look at her. You don't even think about her. Because if you do, I will personally introduce you to a few thousand years of human combat evolution. My species invented martial arts specifically so smaller people could take down bigger ones. And I know them all. Gra opened his mouth, but Andrea cut him off. The Academy will what? Punish me for defending someone? She smiled, all teeth. Go ahead, report me. I'll be here every morning after that. And humans don't give up, ever. Ask the Kresh Empire they tried to intimidate us during first contact. Didn't work out. Gra and his friends backed away, humiliated and defeated. Zer watched Andrea with wide eyes. Why? She whispered once the danger had passed. Why would you do that for me? Andrea shrugged. Because someone should have done it months ago. Because where I come from, we look out for each other. She glanced at Jeremy. And because humans really can't stand bullies. Jeremy nodded. It's kind of a cultural obsession. Word spread quickly across Station Kepler-442. Humans. Those strange newcomers with their soft bodies and intense eyes had made their position clear. They weren't the strongest or the largest, but they were something more dangerous, principled and persistent. From then on, Zer walked with her wings open, catching the light as she moved. Beautiful, unbroken. And every single morning, Andrea stood in the same place, giving her the same small nod. Not because Zer needed protection anymore. Gra had learned his lesson, but because showing up was something humans did. They stood up. They stayed. They refused to let injustice continue. Across the galaxy, species slowly began to understand something essential about humanity. They weren't the most advanced or the most powerful, but they were the most stubborn. And in a universe where strength often decided everything, that stubbornness became a kind of superpower. Zer's wings had been broken every day for 3 long months. But it only took one morning and one human girl to make sure they would never be broken again. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Zer didn't dread the walk to class. She still felt nervous. Velcari bodies were slow to forget trauma, but the tight, sick feeling in her abdomen had loosened. Instead of hugging the wall, she walked in the center of the corridor. Her wings were half open, catching the artificial lights that flickered like distant suns. And as she walked, she noticed something she had never seen before. People were looking at her, not with disdain, not with pity, but with curiosity, respect even. Kryn students paused their clicking conversations to glance her way. A pair of Thoraxians tilted their heads in that peculiar gesture of approval their species used. Even a few drool, though they tried to hide it, stepped aside when she approached. Whispers followed her, soft, surprised, and filled with a new kind of weight. Zer wasn't sure how to process the shift. She had gotten so used to shrinking herself that the sudden space she was given felt unreal. Andrea walked beside her, hands tucked casually into the pockets of her uniform jacket. She didn't seem interested in the attention. In fact, she acted as if nothing unusual had happened the previous day. Zer soon learned this was typical of humans. They adapted to change so quickly. It was almost unsettling. Does it still hurt? Andrea asked. Only a little, Zer said. I heal fast. Good. Andrea nodded thoughtfully. But healing fast doesn't mean the harm didn't matter. Zer wasn't used to someone understanding her pain so clearly. Humans wore their emotions openly. It was strange but comforting. By midday, the rumors had spread to the far wings of the academy. A group of faculty members called her aside after class. They were concerned for her safety, concerned about the humans, concerned about maintaining order. But their concern, she realized bitterly, hadn't been there when her wings were being cracked every morning. Afterward, Andrea met her outside the administrative office. "How did it go?" Andrea asked. "They're worried," Zer said quietly. Andrea raised an eyebrow. "About you?" "No. About you." She hesitated. "About humans?" Andrea laughed softly. "Yeah. That's normal." Zer looked down, her antenna lowering. "I don't want you to get in trouble." "I won't," Andrea said. "Humans get in trouble all the time. We're built for it." Zer didn't know whether she should smile or worry. Humans were so strange, reckless, brave, unpredictable. But they were also loyal. Andrea's presence felt like a shield Zer had never known she needed. Over the next few weeks, the academy slowly shifted. Gra and his group were still around, but they kept their distance. They watched Andrea warily whenever she passed, their heavy frames tensing like animals sensing a predator nearby. The violent arrogance that once filled the hallways seemed to drain away. But the drool weren't the only ones reacting. Many students approached Andrea and Jeremy out of curiosity. Humans drew questions like magnets. Their history, their conflicts, their resilience, everything about them fascinated species who had never needed to fight for survival. One day during lunch, a cringe student named Vri clicked nervously beside the human table. "Is it true," Vri asked, "that humans do not have exoskeletons, venom, or reinforced bones?" "Nope," Jeremy said, biting into a fruit that is still found terrifyingly acidic. "We're pretty squishy," Vri clicked in alarm. "Squishy? Then how did your species survive predators?" Jeremy shrugged. "Teamwork, tools, running very, very far. Also, we're too stubborn to go extinct." Andrea nodded. "That last one is our main adaptation." Zer watched the conversation from across the table, amused at how casually humans discussed things that terrified other species. Humans didn't seem to fear vulnerability. They faced it head-on, like everything else. One afternoon, Zer received a message asking her to report to the central atrium. When she arrived, dozens of students were already gathered. A pair of drool stood in the middle, looking nervous and oddly formal. When the crowd noticed her, a hush fell. Gra stepped forward. Zer felt her wings tighten instinctively, memories rushing back. Gra swallowed hard. "We owe you an apology." Zer froze. Andrea, standing at her side, frowned. She didn't step in, but she didn't move away either. Her presence alone was enough to keep the tension balanced. Gra exhaled shakily. "Our people respect strength. That's the way we've always lived. We thought your species had none." His gaze shifted to Andrea for half a second. "We were wrong." Zer's wings fluttered in confusion. "Why now?" "Because," Gra muttered, "if someone like her stands beside someone like you, then maybe we were blind." Andrea blinked, genuinely surprised. "That's almost poetic." One of Gra's companions elbowed him. Gra cleared his throat. We want to ask if you'll join the Interspecies Ethics Council. The Academy needs someone who sees things differently." Zer stared at them in disbelief. 3 months ago they broke her wings for fun. Now they wanted her on a council? She looked at Andrea. Andrea didn't answer for her. She only said, "You don't have to forgive anyone, and you don't owe anyone anything." Zer took a breath. "I'll think about it." Gra nodded and stepped back. That night, Zer stood on the viewing deck overlooking the shimmering expanse of Kepler-442's orbit. Her wings unfolded fully behind her, catching every glint of starlight. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel proud instead of afraid. Andrea joined her quietly, thinking about the council. Andrea asked. "A little," Zer admitted. "But I'm thinking more about how everything changed so quickly." Andrea leaned against the railing. "Things don't change because people want them to. They change because someone pushes back. Someone like you," Zer said softly. Andrea shook her head. "Someone like you? You survived 3 months of hell. You kept showing up even when no one stood with you." She gestured to Zer's wings. "That's strength." Zer hesitated. "Do you really believe that?" "Yeah," Andrea said. "Humans recognize stubbornness. And you've got it." Warm light filled Zer's chest. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel delicate. She felt resilient. Her wings lifted slightly, shimmering like dawn. "Thank you," Zer whispered. Andrea smirked. "Anytime. Besides, if anyone tries something again, I'm still here." Zer laughed softly. "Yes, I've noticed." Word of the incident continued traveling across the station. Humans became known not as a weak newcomer species, but as allies who stood with those who needed them. Some feared them, some admired them, but no one ignored them anymore. Zer returned to her studies with renewed purpose. She wasn't invisible anymore, and she wasn't afraid of being seen. She walked with her wings open, a symbol of both her identity and her recovery. And every morning, Andrea waited in the same spot, not as a guard, not as a savior, but as a friend. Because that was something humans were exceptionally good at too. Showing up, standing with others, and never backing down, no matter the odds.